I'm Leslie Harris. She's Marianne Wilburn, and we are the Garden Mixer because we like to mix it up about plants. A cocktail. Cheers. What are you having?
Oh, I'm having a mojito, and not just a mojito, but a mojito with mojito mint that I got from Putnam Hill Nursery a few years ago, and which I labeled, by the way.
We just recorded it. I hope you heard it, everybody. The one more sip episode of Labels or Not Labels, and it turns out we came out kind of polarized about that subject.
We were, but it's a darn good mint. I was actually going to have a Pimm's tonight. I had planned on a Pimm's, my first of the season, and A, it's a dreary day, so it
So
sort of
cold. Yeah.
it felt a little sacrilegious. And then B, I didn't have any strawberries, didn't have a cucumber, so I gave it up and I went for the mojito because I had the lime, I had the mint.
I was going to go for a G&T because so we're recording this in the first week of April, and I thought, oh, it's been so warm, and tonight it's going to be in the 40s, and I'm like, nope, back to the bourbon, warm me up. So speaking of that, we're going to start off with Clear Up Corner. We have a few things that we want to address about our last episode, which was the blue and yellow. And one of them is at the beginning of
You'll
that.
find it was the yellow and blue, Leslie.
The yellow and blue. But at the beginning of that, I said something to the effect of, by the time this comes out, we will be lousy in spring, and it will come out in a few days. And it's so true. I'm walking down the street today on my way to a meeting, and all of a sudden I'm like, and that's a lilac that was just not happening a couple of days ago. And that's a deutzia. Deutzia buds are happening. And so many daffodils have gone past. I am so excited about my tulips because I chose those early, middle, late combination of pink and white. And so, yes, some of the earlies have gone past, but I still have little guys that are just like beginning. So it's really, really fun. Are you enjoying your garden?
Oh, I am. The almost imperceptible greening that happens. There's so many stages to this, and there's the awakening. Things are starting to come up. You're seeing the ephemerals. That's so cool. And then there's this. It's usually with a little bit of warmth, and then a couple days of rain, and all of a sudden there's this greening, and it sort of connects all the color in the landscape. All of that is connected by this greening. Now, of course, those are just weed seeds, and you're screwed. But it's still very life-giving and exciting. Everything coming back to life, and it's all going to be great. And you're going to be on your hands and knees for most of it, but it's going to be good. And that's what's happening here.
What else in Clear Up Corner?
I'd like to clear up your use of the word lousy. I think that that like 3/4 of our listeners went, "What is she even talking about? What an archaic expression."
I'm very old. Did you know?
Filled with lice is what you make, like filled with.
I'm
Yes,
itchy.
I'm
I've got little
lousy.
bugs crawling all over my scalp.
Rather than saying this is a lousy podcast.
Oh, but I can't say that because it's not.
No, we couldn't because it's amazing. Okay, so
I have one other thing to blow you away besides my archaic use of the word lousy.
your climbia is not only blooming, but you cut it and put it in a vase, or do you say vase? You probably say vase, don't you?
I do happen to say vase, but sometimes I say vase.
Did your aunt give you that vase?
No, I wanted to cut it because it's so cold outside and it was too far. They're outside and they're all blooming. And I'm like, forget this. You're coming inside with me, but I don't want to bring the whole plant because it's kind of muddy.
Wait a minute. Is the plant going to deal with what we're going to have tonight? Because up here, we're probably going to have a little bit of a frost.
We are down here too. But remember where I live in an old people's home and they don't let things like that happen. They control the temperature. We have poor circulation.
That is amazing. You have to pay extra for that, right?
Oh, the HOA fees are quite stiff. Some of the bodies. Anyway, no, they're right by my back door. It's all good. It's all good. All right, but you had a failure in the garden. I really want to know about this.
I do, but before we talk about my epic fail, could we talk about my epic success?
Oh,
Yes, I would rather start there and end with sadness.
okay.
It's the sweet peas. I've kept my promise. And for that matter, I kept my promise about the snapdragons as well. But they're
Nice.
so tiny and they're probably going to come to nothing because I got them started so late. But we'll see on that. Let's just focus on the sweet peas. Let's keep our
Okay.
eyes on the sweet peas. Because I grew Prince of Orange and High Scent. And listeners, you may remember that I promised faithfully that I would try these plants again because I have burnt them twice in my life and I was just off of them. I don't need them that much. And we had a wonderful podcast with Erin Shannon, or should I say, we had a podcast with the wonderful Erin Shannon.
Oh, both. I think you could throw that word wonderful around anywhere you
Absolutely.
want with Erin.
And she talked to us about the secrets of growing them and to try again. And I promised. And listeners, I did it. And they germinated beautifully. And boy, do they have long roots. And because I haven't been traveling that much, which has been fantastic, this spring is just being home in your space and just the little tiny bits of travel, fantastic. I've been able to really monitor them, and so I got them into the ground at like that perfect moment where those roots are just starting to come out the bottom of a 4-inch pot, but they're light and airy inside. They're not all root bound and awful. So that was great. They're in the garden now. They'll probably be killed tonight. But hey, I got them in just for the record. So
Congratulations to you.
that's my good thing. Now my epic fail,
Yeah, I'm
and
ready.
it's an epic pruning fail. Yeah. Yes. My Be Brave, Be Bold. I was listening to a podcast yesterday. They were talking about pruning, complete opposite message of what you and I were saying, where they said, if you have any doubts, don't. Just walk away. Like, the problem's still going to be there. It ain't going away unless you're going to hire someone. So I still maintain my Be Brave, Be Bold stance. But on this one, my yellow twigged dogwoods are currently bleeding to death in the back of my garden.
So, when did you prune them? How hard? What's going on?
Yeah, so these are Arctic Sun. This is a proven winners variety. I believe that it's Cornus, either stolonifera or it's Sericea. Those two may be synonymous now. I don't know.
Oh, wow. I'll have to
Um,
figure that one out.
very beautiful yellow and orangey red twig dogwood. They're 5 years old, and I've really given them their reins to go ahead and get as big as they can so that then I can then cut them back. I wanted to really get those root systems good. But what I didn't remember, or let me say, remember from Fergus Garrett mentioning plants that bleed if you do them too late in the season, was that they bleed if you do them too late in the season.
Oh,
And I remember him mentioning it at this pruning seminar or symposium that I went to. But I remember being hung up on the idea that he was saying walnut and acer, maple. And I was thinking, oh, yeah, maple. Yeah, no, I know that. But walnut, that's interesting, and I sort of going off in my mind thinking about all my walnuts and would I ever prune them. And meanwhile, he was probably saying, and cornus and birch and, and all these others. And I wasn't listening. So I get home. Oh, he also said, you want to just make sure you do it when those buds, before those buds start to swell. And so I was watching my buds pretty carefully. And then we had these 2 days of a lot of warmth, and actually 3 or 4 days of a lot of warmth. And those buds went from 0 to 60 so fast, it wasn't even true. And in reality, I think they still would have been bleeding to death if I'd done them at the right time 2 days before. It really needed to be a couple weeks before that. But you're always running this balance of you want the stems in the garden, for that prettiness of the late winter garden, but you also need to prune the shrub. So this is a hard prune. This isn't a
sorry, I have a question.
yes, please, Miss
It's a
Harris.
hard, you gave this a hard prune. It's a 5-year-old plant. Did you take away more than a third of the plant?
Oh yeah, oh yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And I mean, and that's okay. Doing a hard prune like that is okay for dogwood. But you just don't want to do that kind of hard prune probably every year. But again, these guys have just gotten a real light sort of cleaning out the congestion for the last few years because I've wanted them to get those roots going and I've wanted them to get tall enough that I can give them a hard prune at a certain level and they can get above deer browsing height quickly.
Okay. Second question. What does it mean to bleed to death if you're a plant? I'm pretty clear on the human being bleeding to death thing. That can happen.
I don't know that they're bleeding to death, but I have a pretty good idea that they could because what they're basically doing is they're not callousing up immediately. That those cuts that I've made on about a half inch or almost 3/4 inch, some of them stems are just weeping and they're just the sap is coming up and it's just going out the edges and it's going
When
down.
did it start? As soon as you made the cut, or you noticed it a day
No,
later?
I noticed it about a day later, actually.
And how many days has it been going on? Like a week's worth? Like bleeding every day?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
And I have to walk by them every day. And so it's like, it's not just like I've killed them. It's like they're going to make me pay for how I'm killing them. Um, and and the reason that I think it could be a bleeding to death thing, and we'll see. I mean, jury's out. Who knows what the season's going to say? But I had one other cornice that was a yellow twig, or I have a lot of them actually in another area, but they can never get above deer browsing height, so I can't do those. But I had another one that was really healthy and really big, and I gave it its reign for a long time. Then I finally cut it back, and I cut it back hard, and it died and it sent up a couple really straggly things, but I never had a really clear understanding of why. Why did that happen? It just I thought, well, maybe there was I don't know, some virus or something in the air because it was strong enough. It should have been able to deal with that. But
and with that plant, did you take away more than a third?
again, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
But I don't want you to focus on the more than a third. I think you're losing the point.
I I
Okay.
I just wanna just let's go back to our pruning episode where one of us said that that is a general good rule of thumb, and the rejuvenation pruning, which it sounds like you came close to doing, like, basically we're starting over, a really, really hard prune is risky. It is risky, and
Oh,
I
wait a
love to
minute. Who
prune.
was it exactly who said you're not going to kill the shrub? Was that me or you?
That was me.
Yeah. Okay. So let's just check tape on that one, okay?
I'll have the staff do that. Where's that Jane? Jane, can you check tape on that one?
So so this isn't a renovation pruning. This is specifically to get the young, new, I mean, it is renovation. Okay, let me take that back. To get those young, new, strappy, colorful stems to come from a central point. So yes, it's renovation, but it's very much an ornamental um, prune. It's not just because the shrub was ailing or it needed renovation. It's a different type of renovation, right? And it should be okay. However, I should have done it before the sap was rising, which means I had to give up the late winter prettiness of it and prune it when it was really a lot more dormant. And because I haven't, it's bleeding and I don't think I can stop it. I mean, I've even thought, should I go out there with like a bandage and just wrap these?
Tourniquet, stat.
It's coming down. The flies. I mean, it's like vultures. The flies are all over it. Oh,
Oh
it's
god.
horrible. I mean, it's such a huge pruning fail. Now, all that said, I still think you should be brave, you should be bold, and you should, because there is no better lesson learned than with the aid of shame. I have learned
And death.
my best lesson with the aid of shame. I mean, you don't forget those lessons. And I have insurance cuts in this. I've got this shrub in other places because I've taken a lot of cuttings from it. So I can replant it. I'm just going to be really annoyed at myself that I sort of stopped listening when Fergus was saying like the first two genera, and I stopped. So here, just for the record, for our listeners, so they don't have to. Here's some that bleed: walnut, dogwood, maple, birch, tilia, which is lime, I think. I think it's
Yeah,
lime, isn't
sounds
it? Does that
right.
sound right?
Hope so.
Grape,
Oh,
vitis, right? So you got to do that really early. Poplar, which is not tulip poplar, liriodendron. It's poplar populus. And I will link in the show notes on Substack. Become a subscriber, substack.com, Garden Mixer Podcast, to a really good RHS article that talks about bleeding stems, because it's really left out of the literature on it. I mean, it is. I actually went looking after this whole terrible, terrible, horrible, not so good thing happened to see what the advice was out there. Nobody's talking about it.
I mean, it's not a subject that that's why I'm asking all these questions. I don't know all that much about it. I just didn't, I mean, vague awareness of things bleeding. I didn't know about the timing. I didn't know that you would be racked with guilt and watch the blood cascading down your driveway.
Wow,
It's
the
just
sap pressure
the
is real.
humanity of it all,
The
or actually, it's
humanity,
not,
the
it's
humanity.
the horticulture of it all. But don't be afraid to cut because hair always grows. I'm just looking at my bangs like, wow, I did a really bad job on those, but they'll grow. They'll grow. Shame, a little shame.
Little shame. So again, be brave, be bold. Don't walk away. Just try, get somebody in to
Walk
help
away, but
you.
come back. Walk away, but come
Walk
back.
away, but come back. So that's that. And I just want to say one word. This spring is the first spring that I have had pumped water down in the main part of my garden. And it is a level of unbelievably, incredibly fabulous that I can't even express with mere words. That's all I will say right now. We can discuss it maybe in a one more sip. I just want to say that it is it is like I have been living in the desert and suddenly I'm in containers. I'll do more containers now. It's extraordinary. Okay, that's all I wanted to say.
All right, but actually, I do have one question. The pump comes from the stream. The the hose that pumps it, do you bring a hose overland, or have you piped it down under the you've piped it down under?
4 spigots. Did this last fall. 4 spigots from the pump that when you turn on a spigot, the pump turns on. And then when you turn off a spigot, the pump turns off. Yeah. It was a big, deal to put all that in. And we were going to do it at the beginning of the season last year. Couldn't get to it. And it's expensive, not crazy, not as much as a water bill. Um, but got to it at the end of the season last year. And so this is the first spring where I am putting containers up in my vegetable garden and not just ones that I know are going to look horrible. So later, because I only have one spigot at my house, at my house itself. It just wasn't something that the previous owner of the house who built the house really thought about. Bless his heart in a very real way. I mean, not in a southern way. I mean, not like bless his heart. He was lovely, but he didn't think much. Anyway,
So we are, I'm not going to say lousy with spring again. We are in the midst of spring. It is so wonderful. Life is so good. All you do is look around. That's all you sort of have to do and pray for rain. I mean, we're a little bit high. We're a little bit high. But just like that wedding reception that you walk into and everything's sparkly. You're one of the earliest guests. You've come from the church and everything's sparkling. It's just so wonderful. It's beautiful. Somebody's worked so hard in this room. Well, you know, 3/4 of the way through, the charcuterie board is really in need of a refresh, and the drunken uncle has grabbed the mic, and it's just not the same.
hopefully not your butt.
Maybe both. The decorations of it are still looking good, and it still looks fabulous in so many ways, but there are issues. There are issues. We have weeds, we have mosquitoes, we have heat, we have deadheading, we have bulb foliage. Right? It's kind of like a hangover.
Yeah, you're saying you are actually describing a hangover, which is made up of 3 main things: a headache and annoyance, being incredibly tired, and promising to do better next time, right? So we're looking at our gardens, and I mean, fair enough. You and I are pretty much smarter than we look, and not experiencing as many hangovers as we used to. But I still think the analogy fits. you're looking at that garden, you're starting to get tired by everything that's in front of you and all that you've got to do. And the garden feels just like there's been this big rush and then a big party and then it's over. And you have that headache or annoyance. Oh my gosh, that's right. The mosquitoes. Oh my gosh, that's right. The groundhogs are out of hibernation. Oh
Uh,
my gosh, that's right. The rabbits. Or that perennial didn't come back. Oh my gosh, I spent a fortune on that last year. Whatever it is, so you have all of that. And then you just have I got to do this better. What am I doing wrong? I've got to do this better. So we're going to focus on what did I do wrong? How can I fix it today? And we're going to focus on that with the idea of succession planting because one of our listeners wrote in to Leslie and Liz Hayes and said, "Hey, can you help a little bit with this whole idea of succession planting? I've got, I want to know how to use my bulbs a little bit better. I don't want them to get in the way of my perennials, and I don't want my perennials to get in the way of the bulbs. And how do you figure all that out?" So we're going to talk about that a little bit today, and we're going to go back in time to Leslie and I meeting for the first time at Great Dixter at the symposium there in May, which was all about succession planting and learning some of those tips and tricks. Oh, I hate you. I hate that phrase, tips and tricks. And I just said it.
do you want me to edit it out?
Oh, could you edit it out?
How much are you willing to pay?
Oh, I don't know. I'm not giving you my shovel.
My
Um,
the golden
the
shovel
golden
is in
shovel,
play.
you're not getting that. Right. We'll do some tips on that. Now, Leslie was not taking notes during any part of that symposium. I can almost guarantee it. Enjoying every second of it. I know you were.
I was, but I knew, and I actually did find a file because I thought, I think I actually did keep something. And it was just a plant list. It wasn't any information about how to do succession planting. Sorry, Liz. Marianne's gotcha on that. I came away just like I do with sort of a vague LITE understanding of how to do that better. And here it could be in a nutshell.
Poor sweet Leslie.
I know she's so insipid. How does she get on? Um,
How was she a teacher? That's all I want to know.
I had a co-teacher early in the days, and she's got this lesson plan, and then she said, "Well, let's switch off because we're teaching the same 7th grade Spanish." And my lesson plan was about half a page long, and hers was scheduled out to the moment for each 40-minute class. And she made fun of herself. She caught herself. She said, "I'm basically telling these kids when to breathe. This is ridiculous. I got to change my ways."
Well, I'm going to guess that your students loved you
Ish.
because you have a zest for life, which makes you extremely attractive.
Oh, well, that's very
So, I
kind
mean,
of you.
that's why I love you. I mean, I'm never going to say that again. So you get
Oh,
one.
thanks. Wait, what did you say? Did you say that you love me?
Nothing. I did not say anything. So moving on into succession planting, we're going to talk about a few different things because there's lots of moving pieces in this idea. And before we begin this, I want to say to any of you who are thinking about succession planting in really real ways beyond just, okay, now I put my pansies in and now I take them out and put my petunias in and now I take the petunias out and I put the chrysanthemums in because technically
That's not
that
it.
is
That's not it.
succession planting though, Leslie, but
Oh, I guess technically, but that's not.
not really what we're looking at. We're looking at like an ecstasy out there. We're looking for plants getting into other plants' business, really meaningful way. And that continuing from the time we get started right now at the beginning of this race until it ends, at the end of the season, and then maybe even a little bit into that. But before we talk about that, I want to encourage people to go to Great Dixter website, greatdixter.co.uk, and look for their videos there. I'll link to some in the show notes on succession planting. Now, last time we told listeners to do this,
It was a needle in a
it was
haystack
not
now.
actually on there anymore. They have you do need to go to Vimeo. They keep all of their videos on Vimeo. So if you can't find it there, and I have been so absent, haven't linked to it in the show notes, then you can find it on Vimeo. And I
I think you
talked
can
to
Google the words Vimeo. That's Vimeo. Great
Mhm.
Dixter, and I think a list will populate.
Succession planting,
Yeah, and that's the one you
and
would
what
wanna
are
go
the
for.
standards of that? And yes, we don't all live in the Gulf Stream bathed beauty of the that sceptered isle. And some of us have harsh climates, extreme even, I would say. Wouldn't you,
What do they
Leslie?
call it? A green and pleasant land. I could
That's
burst into
right.
song here. What's the name of that song?
Please don't.
Da
We can
da da
figure out.
da da
No,
da da
no,
da
not
da.
Jerusalem, not
That's it. Da
Jerusalem.
da 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 da
Oh,
da da
oh Lord.
da.
Moving swiftly on. Not swift enough. You make me lose my train of thought, you bitch. Oh, so our plant palette is going to be different than theirs. And that's the key to this whole thing is figuring out what your plant palette is, not what mine is, not what Leslie's is, not what it is in the Pacific Northwest or down in Florida or out in England. It's what your plant palette is for your area. What can handle your climate, your fluctuations, your extreme climate in Virginia. Um, and then applying those plants and asking the questions of those plants that we're going to talk about. All right, have we set the stage?
I think we have. And could I just take this moment to make it really simple in case somebody has to run off and do something else and they're not going to listen to the real information that you're going to provide? They're going to hit pause and they're going to come back later. But just this simple message of there was so much to learn from Fergus Garrett at Dixter, and Marianne did learn it. And mm,
No, I didn't learn all of it.
oh, I don't,
Obviously, I have no idea what to do with a bleeding to death cornice.
that was a different symposium. Um, but just the idea of mulch, blank, blank mulch, like it's not your friend. And so if you're looking at this, the party is over for spring and you've like, oh my gosh, I have a lot of brown mulch and let me run off to the nursery to buy some things. And the annuals are the size of a $50 because it's April. Um, and besides, they still cost a lot of money. So that's when you think to yourself, yeah, I can do this better. I do not have to drink 6 glasses of wine in 5 hours. Nobody did that last weekend. Nobody did that.
Oh, wait a minute. What now? Was that 6 glasses of wine in 4 hours or 4 glasses of wine in 6 hours that you did at your mother's
At my mother's,
celebration
yeah,
of
I was
life?
my mother's celebration of life, and I started at 4 p.m., and I think the last one, I think I closed up shop at about 9, but, so I just always had a drink in my hand, and I was never at any time, like, tipsy, but the next
That's what
morning,
she thinks.
yep, I asked several people, relatives who would tell me better.
Tell me. And I stand right to you because I feel fine.
No, it was the next morning, I said to my husband, "Yeah, I'm a little parched here, but I was okay," and he said, "Yeah, yeah, you just always had a drink in your hand."
Oh, what is he going to tell you? The
Oh, he
truth?
would tell me the truth, that man. There's there and I would tell him the truth. But just the idea that you can monitor this in a very simplistic way, because this is how I go through life, but just always like I have you know this about me.
Don't kill me.
I know. By minding the gaps, let's go back to Great Britain. Just mind the gaps in your garden and figure out what grows in those gaps, time wise that you don't have right now. And then in terms of marrying them together with beauty and taste, that might not take one season. You can fill it up and shift things though, and really have a very fine picture. And because if you filled it up and loved it the first go, well, that's no fun. Gardening is a process, but filling up gaps and not having mulch is just the very basic step one.
I say it's a very American thing, but it's also a very British thing too in some segments. It's more of a consumer gardener thing. People who aren't really gardeners, maybe, and but they like pretty things in their yard.
Well, they're dabbling and they're learning and they want to have a good place, right?
Right. And we tell them, okay, a good place means plant, mulch, plant, mulch, plant, mulch. I just went past my local small town nursery yesterday and I have never seen so many pallets of mulch. I can't even tell you how many pallets of mulch that you cannot see the nursery building. And there's about 4 racks of pansies. And
Oh,
that's it. It's mulch and
oh.
pansies. And I know it's terrible, but this is the way that a lot of people garden, and there's nothing in between, and it's so neat and tidy. And you know what? I get neat and tidy.
Yeah, I
I
do too.
I think that there's a place for chaos and order, and I'm loving my order in my veg garden right now, but I love my chaos too. But with any of this, we really it works when plants are working together.
Hmm.
So that's what we're aiming for.
Yeah.
That's what we're aiming for.
A woven tapestry of beauty.
A woven tapestry. So we can do that with our anchor plants, our big guys, our shrubs, our trees, sometimes our large shrub-like perennials, like an aurelia. Do you
Mm.
grow sun king?
So I left about 5 of them behind at the big garden, and last week when I was impulse shopping, there was this cute little 1 gallon, that's gonna be a big 5 by 5 plant by and by, but I couldn't believe it. 1 gallon Aurelia, and leaves poking up, clearly breaking dormancy, $10. I'm like, "You are coming with me."
That's a really good price for that
I
shrub.
know,
Or it's not a shrub, it's a perennial,
yeah.
but
Well, it's a little notion of a thing right now, but I will make it good.
that is an anchor. That's one of those big guys that's, you're probably gonna put it in and you're not gonna move it. And
Mhm.
if you move it, you move it once and it's there. So you've got those anchors. You've got your spring bulbs that are and your fall ones as well.
And some
You've got
summer
your
ones, you got the
and
lilies
some
and
summer ones, yeah,
the alliums that are coming, at the beginning of summer.
right? You've got your perennials, your herbaceous perennials, and varying degrees of those all through from spring till fall. You have your seeded annuals, the ones that you are planting in flats. Like right now, you might be planting zinnia for the warm season ahead, or you might be planting. Give me another warm season annual. Come
Well,
on,
cosmos,
cosmos. That's
nicotiana
what.
maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, the things that really smack of the end of summer, really exuberant, great things at the end of summer, colorful usually.
And you can buy those too. So you maybe have those ones. When I say seeded annuals, I mean ones that you have seeded. And then you've got your, what do I call them? They're the temperennials that we talked about all that time ago, but they're the hardy, half hardy annuals that you have to bring inside and then bring back outside. I call them uh I call them high maintenance partners. but but those plants that I'm doing right now that and you are as well that are going to maybe go into the garden to fill a little gap, some begonias or something that's not
Like
hardy.
Tranthus is a great one, or the
Like Xanthus,
Tradescantia, that wonderful sort of, what do they call that? Wandering Jew.
widow's tears. Yeah, or what's another word for it? Tradescantia is good. I mean, that's what it
Yeah,
is.
yeah, and that's a great
And
filler. You can make a million cuttings of that.
yeah. And then you have your volunteer seedlings, the ones that just come back here and there randomly, and you cannot plan it. You can hope, but you can't plan it. And hopefully, you planted those in the fall, and you have some that have already given you these nice big rosettes because they germinated in the fall, perhaps, and they've gone through the winter. And then those that you've thrown, maybe a couple months ago, and they're happening. And then the climbers going up the pole or the trellis or the side of the house. So there's a lot of different players in this particular play, and it's figuring out how they work together.
Mhm.
So we can figure out how they work together, and then we just do the same thing every year. But that's not really that much different than the whole mulch thing, is it?
I mean, it does lack creativity. It's static, yeah.
Yeah, and that's why I love cottage annuals, which is what Brie called them cottage annuals, and I hadn't really thought of those two things together, but that is what they are, the cottage garden favorites, the larkspur, the poppies, the nigella, the orlea, the florum, cornflowers, magus, the
Mhm.
carrots, all the different umbellifers. And these are the volunteer seedlings that really help you between seasons. Because, when you're trying to figure out what you're doing with all your perennials, you've got these little guys springing up all over the place. And it's especially figuring out which ones will seed well for you, depending on your climate in fall,
Mhm.
which ones will germinate in fall so that you don't have to start from in the spring. That's a big deal. There's a great book called Book Moment with Marianne Wilburn
We're ready.
called Cool Flowers by Lisa Mason Ziegler. And I've actually recommended this one before, and it's been on show notes before on Substack. And it is a very quick read. It's not difficult. It's just going through, I don't know, maybe 24 different genera of plants or species of plants that seed themselves. They either seed themselves or you seed them in the fall so that they can go through. And that's for sort of 6B, maybe 6A, and warmer. Great book, a really good idea. So you get that, it gets started earlier in the season.
And many of them, so you just listed, like, just to repeat that because you made me a list and I can read. I'm literate.
Are you?
Uh,
Okay.
at times. Larkspur, poppies, nigella, cornflower. So what do you mean by cornflower?
Is it Centaurea?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
That's a good, yep, Centaurea. And I think of that as a perennial, but it is not, it doesn't come back reliably, correct?
Well, it's like a or not verbascum,
Verbena bonariensis?
verbena bonariensis,
Okay.
which will flower the first year from seed, but then becomes this little perennial in your garden, which is pretty handy. So I consider that verbena a very great.
Oh, I love that, and that's a beautiful see-through plant. You could grow it at the back of the border. It can hit you in the face at the front of the border. That is one of my favorites. The Orlea, I'm such a fan because it's in my garden, and the reason it's in my garden is because you gave me a packet of seeds, and I followed directions, did not make a note of it, and now I have to text Marianne a photograph like, "Hey, any idea what this is?"
So when did you throw those? Do you remember?
Well, probably last fall because you told me to. I do be I mean, I'm coachable and willing. I'm just not gonna make a note of it or make any labels for it or anything like that.
So when you threw them, I'm just curious, did you do any like fluffing of the ground or anything? You just threw them off the deck with the gin and tonic in your hand or
Pretty sure it might have been a beer, but yeah, pretty sure.
okay. And that's the thing because that's how the flower is throwing them too. By the end of the season, some a little or seeding a little earlier in the season, spring, early, late spring, like a poppy is almost completely dried by the beginning of summer, end of summer, and it's ready to throw those seeds, but it might not actually break its head and drop them until the beginning of fall, end of summer.
Okay.
So you're just basically doing what the plant would do and seeding when the plant would do. And the plant doesn't come along with a little bit of dirt and cover its own seeds
No.
afterwards. It just throws them.
So that it's funny because I know I had larkspur, I know I had this Orlea that you gave me, and I know I had poppies, several different kinds. So all right, so I'm pretty sure I did all these at the same time, and I did it at the front of the border at the front of the house. But then HOA guys came and put a thick layer of mulch, and it could be that the Orlea was the only one that was tough enough to come up through there because I'm not seeing any poppy seedlings or larkspur at this stage.
Yeah, poppy needs a little bit of light to germinate, I believe.
Mm,
So that would make sense. Yeah, the mulch, how much you mulch a bed means how many volunteers you're going to get, also how many weed seeds you're going to get. And so you're always balancing it a little bit. And right now, I'm in a very naked bed state right now where I've got a lot of dirt showing through. I know that I'm going to have a lot more weed seeds coming up, but I also want to see what my volunteers are
yeah,
doing. So I'm in this middle place. If I had a whole bunch of minions to be picking out all of those volunteers, setting them aside, or pricking them out, and then mulching, and then doing a little bit of, play with the putting them back in, that'd be perfect. But I don't.
yeah.
So what I'm doing is just sort of watching them go and trying to mulch areas.
A little bit at a time. Another rhythm or pattern that you could use, and I had to do this when I was running my business. Spring was crazy time, so I couldn't pay attention to my garden, so things came along. Summer is actually besides winter, it is the quietest for running a gardening business in the South anyway, because it's just so bloody hot and everything kind of calms down and you've established all the containers and the clients are happier if they've gone to the beach or what have you. So that is when I would choose to mulch my own garden. And it was very fun because A, you didn't have to use as much mulch because everything's popping. B, well, here's a downside. You had to really understand where you were putting that mulch. So that was the downside. It was time consuming, even though it was not nearly as much mulch. But you really stuck your head in like, "Ooh, oh, wait, I see that little, seedling that I wanna move." And it was like a week-long process, and I didn't mulch every bed of that garden, but I mulched the front, fancy beds because I would interrupt myself and go grab that little seedling. "Oh, that's a clammy, and I want that here and not there." And then I go pot that up, go water that in, and come back to my mulching. So it's not it's hot, but it's kind of fun, and it's not just grunt work. It's more of a exploring your garden type of thing.
Yeah, I totally look at it like exploring my garden. Right now, I have all these bupleurum seedlings that have clustered around, obviously, where it just fell and dropped every single seed it had. I've got to transplant a lot of those where I've got bare areas, but there's also a lot of bitter crusts
Oh,
and
yeah.
other stuff coming up in there. So it's a real balancing game. But so those cottage annuals, they are your friend, and use them to be the in between in seasons, because right now the the daffodils in one of my little triangular beds, those are going over. I've got some Iphian coming up right now and some muscari coming up right now to hold that bed as other perennial plants foliage comes through and the grasses start to get bigger. But in just maybe a couple weeks time, I'm going to have this beautiful display from the poppies and the larkspur while I'm waiting for the canna and the grasses to actually come to maturity for the summer. So that, they really are an integral part of the whole deal. They're sort of the frosting. They're almost a crutch. I mean, wouldn't you call them a bit of a crutch? They're a bit of a crutch.
No, no, you're making yourself feel guilty, which is what you like to do. No, they're fantastic. They're fantastic good gardening I know. Just in case audio listeners didn't recognize that sound, she was
I was doing some self-flagellation. So those are some of the ones, and I wrote down a few for the cool season: larkspur, poppies, nigella, cornflower, orlea, bupleurum, anthruscus, amimagus, daucus, lunaria, and
Oh,
primroses for
lunaria,
early
that's a
spring.
great plant, the money plant. Do you grow that?
I do.
Purple, white, both?
I've got purple, I've got white, and I have a new one that Andrea Sprott from Elizabeth Lawrence Garden gave me, which is a purple foliaged
No.
variety.
I
Yes, I
love
do. One
that,
of my
and you have seeds. You will have seeds from that plant,
I
will
will
you
have
not?
seeds from that. It did seed itself very well last year, and they came true.
Nice.
It's those warm-seeded volunteers, zinnia, Verbena bonariensis. We talked about that. Cosmos, clammy. We have to write these things down. We're very, very old. Otherwise, we'll forget. Amimagus, verbascum. How many mullions do you grow? Do you grow or did you grow?
Now, is that the mullein that kinda grows at the side of the road and it's the tall
Right.
yellow cone? Yeah, I've only grown that a few times. I like that plant a lot, and I love how it gets to be about 4 feet tall at the side of the road and, cars are going by at 80 miles an hour. But if you put one in your garden and it's got some compost, paying attention to it, those things will get 8 feet tall. They are so fun. It's got the lamb's ear, soft, fuzzy gray foliage. Yeah, that rosette, and then this thing shoots up, and I just think that's a very cool plant. So I don't grow it much, but I have grown it and enjoyed it.
Funny story about that. About a million years ago, when I was first gardening and I had absolutely no money. And so I was trying to pull in as many plants as I could from other places, like the side of the road.
Yeah.
I loved those verbascum. I read a lot about Christopher Lloyd's garden, Great Dixter. He used Olympicum a lot, which was the same sort of candelabra yellow verbascum, beautiful vertical interest. So I'm seeing these other ones on the side of the road, and I thought, well, I'll just dig up a couple of those down by the railroad tracks, and I'll use those.
Yeah.
So they bloomed. I went down there digging away, thinking I was going to get arrested.
Adds to the excitement.
Just a little bit of excitement. My toddler's going, "Mommy, Mommy, why are you going to prison?" And I get it home, and it promptly died.
Doesn't it have a taproot?
It's a taproot from here to China, but the other little tiny bit of information that I hadn't quite hold on is that it's a biennial and it's a true biennial.
Oh,
So the
right.
first year it matures and it creates this rosette, which isn't massive, but is, becomes pretty big. It starts to germinate about now. And by the end of the summer, you've got a rosette that's about 6 inches wide. And then you start the next year and it starts putting on girth. And then you get up with this 18-inch wide rosette. So what I had basically dug and possibly went to prison, class 1 felony, possibly, was actually on its way out. It was dead, just like a teasel or something along those lines. But what it did give me was
Seeds.
seeds, and it seeded all over the place. And then I got those. I the next year took seeds and threw seeds because you got to get yourself off that 2-year thing. Otherwise, you're every other year you've got bloom.
And that's a big plant.
Yeah, you're going to do it 2 years in a row to get yourself on that annual thing. So verbascum, that's a great one. What else? Warm plants. Verbascum is certainly one.
Oh, I got myself some the bronze fennel. I have 5 of those up on the hillside because I'm trying to do, the Tuscany sort of Italian garden up there.
We should give a caveat with fennel, which is that it really is very, very, very seedy. I mean, it will throw seeds. They will germinate. You will be digging up fennel. You'll also be digging up bitter cress, and you'll be digging up crabgrass, and you
As
might
long
as
as
well.
you're on your hands and knees, all good, right? Easy to recognize.
Easy to recognize. And it also feeds several butterflies,
Swallowtails,
uh,
right?
swallowtails all over it. I
Mm.
mean, it's an incredible pollinator plant that does, do a little bit of reputation damaging to native plants are the only thing that feeds our pollinators because it is not a native plant. Begonia grandis for the shade garden.
Love that.
I know
Love
you love
that
that
plant.
plant, don't you?
Mhm.
And that's a terrific one. Tenantia pringuli, which is, I think, called spotted widow's tears, I believe.
Yeah, I think I've heard you say
It's
that
like
before. Yeah.
a tradescantia. It blooms later in the season. Blooms first year from seed. Beautiful little, very tradescantia like blossom, just covered. Bees love it. Tithonia, Amimagus.
Tithonia is a good orange color for you, right? I even kind of like that orange.
Yeah, and the cosmos that I grow, besides Purity, which is white, are the Bright Light series. I think Renee's Seeds does them and they're oranges and just off orange. And I just love those hot colors.
That's you, baby.
Yeah. So those are your extra assists, your flower assists, but you can't forget about the foliage as well, because that foliage is going to be in between all these, you throwing in this and that. And before we move to foliage, just remember if a seedling is volunteering itself somewhere in your garden and you didn't want it there, just like Leslie did, just like I did, prick it out like you would in a tray in a greenhouse and put it where you want it and make sure you water it in for a couple days. And then you didn't have to do all of the work of germination.
Don't you find that plants love to germinate in gravel? Because you've got a lot of gravel down by your veg area, and I had that gravel path, and now I have a gravel path in my tiny little garden. They just seem to love the gravel. It's better than loam or peat or whatever else you could provide, and it's fun because in my case, that's the only place I have to walk. This is a tiny garden, so I will be pricking them out. But it's just like you said, nature's done all the work. You just go and grab that plant and put it where you want it.
It's a true seed bed. The one thing that I will say over gravel paths over, say, mulched paths, because both of them attract seedlings, is that with the gravel path, I can very, very easily use the scuffle hoe and get rid of those.
Rock rake or scuffle hoe, you can just cut them off at their knees and they're done and they kind of dry up and you don't know that they're there. It's not as labor intensive.
Yeah, the mulch paths feel like I'm actually encouraging so many more in the dirt
You probably are.
to grow. I mean, you are for the gravel too, but so moving on to foliage.
Mhm.
What's your favorite foliage assist?
Well, right now, I'm just excited about the polygonatum coming up, and that's a really good foil for some hostas and that kind of thing. The way it pokes up and the variegation, and then you can grow lower things like the arum or something underneath of it, and then for sunny areas, I do use, I would say, annuals sort of as ground cover in this new garden. You could do Plectranthus is one of them. I like that gray-green one with the fuzzy leaves that just crawls all over the place. You could just buy yourself a couple of little sweet potato vines, and that's a great, you could do the variegated, you could do the bright green. That's an excellent trip for
Nothing else will grow because it's just going to smother everything.
It
Yeah.
is, but that's a really good trick for if you are beginning on this journey and you've made a new bed and you're like, I cannot afford, 25 perennials to fill this sucker, and sow some seeds and then grow some ground covers like that are just so inexpensive.
Nasturtium.
Yeah, nasturtium is a
You
great
could
one.
do that.
Yeah.
And in the shade, you could do it with your pothos cuttings. I do
Oh,
that in my
they're
shade
easy to
area
root?
with the devil's ivy. Yeah, it's epipremnum. But devil's ivy, your basic house plant, all those cuttings you've been rooting and you're not really sure why, you can just over the summer you can put them down in your shady areas if you're not in Florida and it's because it's invasive in Florida
Oh, oops.
for good reason. And they'll go to town in the shady areas that aren't going to be as happy, that the Ipomoea, the sweet potato vine, is not going to be as happy in.
In the shade. And the bunnies love sweet potato vines, so that's a pain. So maybe the pothos is better.
Yeah, yeah, maybe. I don't know how the bunnies feel about the pothos. We'll have to ask them if they're alive after my Jack Russell puppy comes into his own.
Come on, Badger.
That's right, Badger. Come on, don't let me down. So the polygonatum that you were talking about, that is variegated Solomon seal
Mm-hmm.
for listeners who are not familiar with that one. And that is a primo plant for strength and interest throughout the gardening season. It is a plant that is fairly expensive actually as a perennial, but once you've bought it and you've gone a couple years with it, you're going to have a lot of it. So go ahead and get yourself one and put it in a maybe partial shade space that's got some moisture, and you'll be sharing it with your friends in time.
Yeah,
It's a
and
great
once it
plant.
gets established, it loves. They're kind of tuber things that you could dig up, and they're almost kind of reminds me of Convallaria, the lily of the valley. They're almost pips the way they look, but they're rhizomes or tubers that go under the ground, so you can take one and break it up a few ways. It's a great plant.
Yeah, fabulous plant. Okay, so those are just a couple of those.
I see that you put down comfrey is a great spreader, and I just like I think what I was growing in my old garden was so useful, but it was just the regular green.
I put down comfrey, but I very particularly put down a specific cultivar, Axminster Gold. Yeah, because comfrey really starts to spread, and it spreads by seed and it spreads by root. And if you even leave a tiny little bit of root in the ground, you're going to have comfrey, and it will come up through your perennial. I was just digging it out today from Scutellaria. It's coming up right through the middle of it, which is like, oh my gosh, how to extricate it. So I do like it, but I want it in a very general area, and I don't want to have it all over the garden.
But the Axminster Gold will just behave itself.
Oh, yeah. It behaves like nobody's business. It sometimes wants to revert, but you just take those leaves off. I don't really have a big problem with that, but it can. You just got to stay on top of it. And it is a beautiful gold and green, huge big leaves. It stays very clumped. It doesn't really run. I wish it did. It's actually one of those plants that once you have it, hold on to it because it's not patented, so it's not on the edge of your shelf. The pass along plant.
Does it divide easily?
It doesn't love it to be divided, but it does, and that's how I got my division. Was that friend of mine down in Carrollton who gave me a beautiful division, and it's still going strong. I love that plant.
Nice.
So remember those special, very interesting foliaged perennials in your succession plan because they're going to help do some of the heavy lifting in between your big flush of Rudbeckia or your big flush of Echinacea or your perennial season in between. And did we really talk about bulbs in that whole process?
No, I think because we're recording in April and we're rolling in the bulbs right now, but we've touched on the fact that bulbs can be early, middle, late. All the big players, tulips and daffodils some of them are still to come. But then you roll into the alliums, and we're talking about the bulb alliums. the herbaceous alliums are fantastic perennials, but that's later on in the summer. And then lilies. I sunk a bunch of lilies last fall along my fence. I'm very excited to see the results.
I sunk a bunch of lilies into the mouths of my deer, and so
Oh,
now they're all within the fence boundaries. And I'm really working with a lot of double oriental lilies now because I love them. They last so long in the vase. I do love those big, dark anthers on a lily, but the fact is, you bring them in and they put pollen all over
your white
everything,
blouse, your tablecloth,
everything,
everything.
tablecloth, everything. So these are without that. They've been bred that way. I know that's terrible as far as the ecology goes, but these are cut flowers. I'm bringing them inside. So I'm working with a lot of those now. But the bulbs, you want to be thinking about what is going to complement the emerging perennial foliage that's coming up and what can complement it without smothering it. There are some bulbs that are smotherers. Allium is a big smotherer.
Mhm.
It loves to, it just puts these huge leaves down. And if you've got something like phlox paniculata, it can't roll with that. It's just gonna, with no light, not able to, it's not gonna push through. But if you have something like polygonatum, the Solomon seal, it's gonna push right up through that. So you have to figure out for your garden what can push through if you're using some allium or another smother. What's another good smother? Tulips aren't, sometimes their foliage is quite big.
Can be, yes. If you have a big stand of daffodils and they're woven through perennials, you have to do something about that. And, remember that daffodil foliage needs to stick around for a minute before it starts to bend and fold because it would be great if they could naturalize and come back next year. And therefore you want them to collect as much chlorophyll as possible. But as soon as they start flopping on their own, you're probably okay to just sort of shove them, take them away, but that's so much work. Just shove them under the leaves of the emerging perennial that you'd rather see in the moment.
So you're doing all this shifting with one leaf goes over the
Finger
other
combing, all
tunnel.
that kind of
Do you
thing.
have any minions? Are there any minions
There are no
involved in
minions
any of
here,
this?
and there were no
Okay.
minions at my big garden. I did that. I like to garden.
Okay. All right. It sounds very particular, but
Oh, not in every inch of my garden, but those thousands of bulbs in the back. I'm just like, there we go. Good luck to you. But no, if I want if I want an area to look neat, literally getting all the foliage from bulbs in going in the same direction is better than the big sprawl. Like it's better than the bedhead. All right. Well, have we done it? I hope we have. I mean, it takes it doesn't take a village. It's probably just you, but it does take a
I
lot of
wish.
ideas and a lot of observation. It takes a bit of shopping, and it takes just that creative mind of like wow, I nothing's happening. I have a lacuna of color in my garden. Let me just investigate what I could be growing next year so that you won't be as hungover.
Which is why our dam, I wish I'd planted that, always comes in. That's the whole point of that is looking at the gaps in your garden and saying, I really wish I had something right now. And oh my gosh, my neighbor has got this incredible phlox divaricata that's blooming right now.
Right
And it's
now.
incredible, right? Literally right
Oh, it
now.
is. Yeah, it's gorgeous.
And it's gorgeous. And I want some of that. And so that'll fill that gap, that in between gap. So it's a lot of observation. And I really think it really does come with time, doesn't it?
Oh,
Because you
yeah.
can read a lot and you can hear a lot of people, talking at you, but until you're moving with it and figuring out that palette that you're working with, there's no prescribed recipe. It's just getting to know your garden in a very intimate way, which is exactly the way you want the flowers to get to know each other, the plants to get to know each other is in a very intimate way so that they're all having fun with each other. And if one's crowding the other out, it's out of here and you're working with them. And one last thing with the succession planting, if you,
You say one last thing. What if I had one last thing? Huh?
oh, maybe you
Huh?
do. I'm sorry. One last thing for me
Okay.
is if you really want to change it up a bit, you can do what Fergus Garrett calls a bedding pocket. So you've got your anchors and you've got some bulbs underneath them and you've got some perennials around their edges, but you've got this one area that changes out differently every year. It's a little different. It may be the same kind of different. Maybe you always put Dahlia, Mystic Illusion, and Pretoria Canna next to each other in that space, but it always comes out and something goes in. So in the spring, you might have the lictrum and stuff doing all of its stuff, but then you might take that out and put something else in. So those are little bedding pockets that can maybe make your garden look like it's a little different. It's not always the same every year, but you don't have to do those.
No, and in fact, that is very labor intensive. And so,
I knew you wouldn't like that.
well, I mean, I do like it. And actually, with the size of the garden that I have, and Liz, I know the size of your garden, and unless you do something about those houtonii,
Houtonia, oh my gosh, does she have a
she has
houtonia
a
going
little
on?
houtonia problem.
Oh my
I
gosh,
know.
I've got that so bad. Should we talk about this plant for a second to say never, ever, ever, ever plant
I
it?
think we leave it at that, but we could have like a one more sip on it, and other thugs too. But I would say that that idea of a planting pocket is fabulous. And for instance, if you knew you were having a party and you wanted it to look just so, that's a great idea that people are going to be looking right at that. But actually, at parties, you know what? They look for two things: people to talk to and the bartender. So don't worry too much about your garden.
They're looking at overall shock and awe.
Exactly.
Except for people might like me looking for
Yeah.
labels.
Where's the
And who
damn
cares about
label?
people like me anyway? We're just like this much of the population. Don't even bother. And, we're not mixing at the parties well anyway.
One thing we forgot to mention for those people who want to fill spaces quickly, don't forget that flowering shrubs can be part of your succession. And
Those are the anchors.
they are the anchors. And so, you can have the hydrangeas.
Tropicals, dropping a big old brugmansia that you overwintered in your garage down into the space. All of a sudden,
You've filled
you've got all
4 square feet. Yeah. And vertically too. So things like that. It's just thinking, all the little guys that we mentioned are still important, but you can go big and that's going to help your workload.
you do have to think about what you can manage.
Right.
It's a terrible, horrible thing. But there's nothing worse than taking out the cat of nine tails and doing the self-flagellation. It's the worst. Believe me, I do it on a weekly basis, and it's not fun. So be like Leslie. Be more Leslie.
Like,
Do not be more Marianne.
all is well. We're having fun here. Here's some seeds.
Yeah.
Sprinkle, sprinkle.
Or Leah, woo! Don't even know what it is.
And
Ha-ha!
then you get a hangover.
That's right. Well, did we solve that particular hangover? You're gonna have a hangover, folks. It's gonna either be this, in about a month's time, or it's gonna be in 2 months' time. There's going to be that moment where you're like,
Oh,
oh,
the
why am I
heat, the
doing this?
weeds, the
I don't know what I'm
mosquito. I'm so
doing.
sick of this, blah, blah, blah. So try to muddle
Power
through
through.
and try to make it so that you have some beautiful things to look at too. Don't forget to follow us on all of our socials. And don't forget that this is now a video podcast. And so we are on YouTube and we slide in photographs of almost every plant that we discuss. And we're hoping that we won't go to jail and that they are royalty free. No, we're doing a pretty good job with that.
Not true.
Most
Most of them are from
all
our
of
garden.
them are from our gardens, or we have permission from Proven Winners to do some
That's true.
advertising for them.
So, and Leslie takes care of a lot of the video or all the video editing.
Yes,
So
I
that's where
do.
she makes her snide remarks. I do the show notes. That's where I make my snide remarks. So
Go to Substack.
go to substack.com, the Garden Mixer podcast, subscribe, share this podcast because gardening shouldn't be boring. Gardening podcasts should make you get your juices flowing and want to get out there and have a giggle or two because this really should be an enjoyable thing. I'm not going to say it's always fun. That's Leslie's corner. But it should be enjoyable. This is a creative, beautiful pursuit. Keep doing it. It's worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we'll see you next time.
Cheers.
Oh, yeah. Well, my drink's empty, so it's time to end. Cheers.